Picture this. It's 1865. Washington, D.C., crowds are going wild, cheering for the end of the Civil War. And who's leading the victory parade? None other than
General Custer.
General George Armstrong Custer. Young, dashing, long golden hair. The picture of a hero.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And then a young lady throws a bouquet. He catches it, but suddenly, oh no, his horse bolts.
Oh.
The crowd gasps, but Custer, never one to disappoint, keeps his cool, regains control.
A showman.
Oh yeah, thunderous applause. I mean, that's the Custer everyone knows, right? Brave, bold, larger than life. But
was that really him?
was there more to the story?
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that public image, well, it was a bit carefully crafted, you know?
So that's what we're going to look at today, right? Like peeling back those layers of myth
Exactly.
to see who the real Custer was.
Yeah, and we're going to use some great insights from the Rest is History podcast to help us along the way.
I love that podcast. It's interesting, right? Because you think Civil War hero, you think, oh, he must have wanted to head straight out west after. But Custer,
Not so fast.
not so fast. He had some pretty different ambitions, I guess you could say.
He did. I mean, think New York high society, wealth, influence. He was hobnobbing with the Astors, even dabbling in politics.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes to the detriment of his military career, actually.
Interesting.
Kind of fascinating, you know? He wanted that social recognition, power, not just battlefield glory.
And there's that story, right, about Custer and the clairvoyant.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Like, what does she say about his future?
Well, she predicted a long life, wealth, and success. Said he'd have to choose between railroads and mining.
Huh. She got that wrong.
She did. No mention of the plains, right? So maybe Custer actually wanted that kind of life at first, conventional power, prosperity.
I mean, it makes you think maybe he saw going west as a detour, you know?
Like, get back to New York eventually.
Yeah, a temporary setback before he could rejoin that high society life.
It's an interesting thought. But, you know, as we'll see, those years on the frontier, they were a lot more than a detour. They really shaped him. He saw both the beauty and the brutality of the West.
And that's what led him to the Cheyenne, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about that frontier life.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine going from those fancy New York parties
I know.
to being stationed in Kansas.
Yeah. Not exactly a step up in the world.
Not at all. And I mean, one newspaper even called his army bummers and loafers.
Ouch. Not very flattering, is it?
No.
Yeah.
Talk about a culture shock.
It must have been. Gone from those refined circles to a rough and tumble world. But you know what? It seems Custer embraced it.
He did. The podcast mentioned, like, soldiers making ants fight each other for fun.
Oh, yeah. Boredom, right?
And then there's that story about Mrs. Nash.
Oh, the camp nurse. Yeah, the one who turned out to be a man.
It's crazy.
Wild West, huh?
It is. But I mean, even with all that, Custer found ways to enjoy himself. He had his dogs, hunted buffalo.
And did some taxidermy on the side.
Right.
He was quite the character.
He was. Even accidentally shot his own horse once.
Oh, yeah, while hunting buffalo, right?
Yeah. But he always found the joy, even in the tough times.
He was adaptable, that's for sure. Restless, too. But, you know, we can't forget the bigger picture here. While Custer was enjoying himself, things were getting tense. Westward expansion, you know.
Right, pushing further and further into Cheyenne territory.
Yeah. A clash was brewing. Yeah, and you know, a lot of that tension, well, it came from Custer's commanding officer, General Hancock.
Oh, really? What did he do?
He was, how can I put this? He believed in using force, overwhelming force.
To deal with the Native Americans.
Exactly. Subdue any resistance. And, you know, that was pretty common back then. A lot of people saw Native Americans as obstacles to progress, you know.
So it wasn't just Hancock, it was like a wider attitude.
Yeah, very much so. And Hancock, what did he do? He burned down Cheyenne villages.
Oh, wow.
Trying to break their spirit, force them onto reservations.
But that just made things worse, right?
It sparked an uprising.
You know, it's hard not to see both sides here, right?
Absolutely. It's complex.
The Cheyenne, they were defending their homes.
Yeah, their way of life.
And, yeah, they fought back. But come on, the U.S. Army had so much firepower.
Right. A total imbalance.
It's hard to call that a fair fight.
It really is. And it's in this context that we get to, well, the Washtenaw Massacre.
Oh, right. That's a dark chapter.
It is a stark reminder of how brutal westward expansion could be. You see, Custer had been going through a lot personally.
Oh, boy.
Marital problems, you know? And he led this winter campaign against the Cheyenne. And, well, it ended with the attack on Black Kettle's village.
Black Kettle, he was the chief who wanted peace.
He was, advocated for it. And his village was peaceful, you know?
But they still attacked.
They did. And it was awful. Killed women, children, slaughtered hundreds of ponies, burned everything down.
It's hard to believe, even some people back then called it a massacre.
It was a massacre, and it's really hard to grapple with. Some people say Custer was just following orders.
I can see that.
But others, they see him as a symbol of how awful the Indian Wars really were.
And there's more, right? I mean, the podcast mentioned,
Cheyenne women?
yeah, some of them, including Black Kettle's niece, were taken as sex slaves.
It's horrible.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you square that with Custer being a hero?
It's hard, isn't it? It makes you question everything.
It does. The whole idea of westward expansion, the cost,
Right. And the people who led it.
it really makes you think.
Yeah.
So what happened after the Washita Massacre?
Well, the Cheyenne, they were pretty much crushed. A lot of people thought the Indian Wars were over.
Really?
And President Grant, he wanted peace. So he started a policy to try and assimilate Native Americans.
Into white society.
Yeah. A more humane approach.
On paper, at least.
Right. But it didn't really work.
It didn't. Why not?
Well, it's a long story. It failed to address the real issues,
Mhm.
the injustice, the cultural divide. And we'll talk more about that in a future deep dive when we look at the Lakota Sioux.
Okay.
But the point is, the Washita Massacre, it was a turning point. Sure, it quieted things down for a while.
But real peace.
No, not really. And it really solidified Custer's image as this fierce, ruthless warrior.
Even though it was, horrific.
Yeah. But it also raises those questions, right? About his methods, about the cost of victory.
It's fascinating. Custer, he's this bundle of contradictions.
Yeah.
He wants to be part of the elite, but he loves the rough life of the frontier. He can be charming, but also incredibly cruel.
How do you make sense of that?
That's hard.
It is, and that's what makes him so interesting, He represents the good and bad of westward expansion.
All wrapped up in one person.
Exactly. Brave, skilled, but also flawed. Ambitious, egotistical.
You said egotistical. It's true. His political moves, they seemed more about attention than strategy.
They did, didn't they?
He campaigned against his superiors, even endorsed Grant's opponents in the 1868 election.
Risky move, huh?
It was. Was he just reckless? Or did he have some grand plan?
I think his ego just took over, He loved going against the grain, causing a stir.
Even if it hurt him in the long run.
It seems that way. Maybe he just couldn't see the bigger picture sometimes.
Blind spot.
Yeah, maybe. He put himself first, even when it was a bad idea.
But he got away with it for a long time.
I did. Why? Well, he was good at his job, that's for sure.
A talented soldier.
No doubt. And let's be honest, his image helped.
The maverick.
Yeah. People loved the whole plays by his own rules thing.
I could see that. Daring, flamboyant.
It was romantic,
And then you have his personal life, which is a whole other story.
Yeah.
The podcast mentioned marital problems, infidelity.
Maybe even an affair with Black Kettle's niece.
After he took her prisoner?
It's unclear, but it definitely adds another layer to the whole picture.
So was he a loving husband or a philanderer? A noble soldier or someone who took advantage of women?
Who knows? The evidence is mixed.
It's like they're two Custers. The public image.
And the real man.
And they don't always match up. It makes you wonder if he was playing a part,
Oh, yeah.
Like his look, it was so over the top. That long blonde hair, not exactly standard military issue, right?
No, it wasn't. Short hair, that was the style for military men back then.
So he was making a statement.
Definitely a rejection of conformity. I mean, he even used to put cinnamon oil in his hair. Can you believe that?
Seriously.
Yeah, it was all part of that romantic image, the larger-than-life persona.
And I wonder, what did the Native Americans think of that? I mean, long hair, it had a lot of significance for a lot of tribes, right?
Strength, connection to nature. You're onto something there.
Like, did Custer even realize that?
Maybe, maybe not. But it definitely adds another layer to the whole thing, a fascination with their culture, but also a disregard for it.
It's almost like he was caught between two worlds, right?
Totally. Embracing the wildness of the frontier, but also representing the forces that were destroying it.
That's a good way to put it. So much tension,
Yeah, and that's what makes Custer so interesting, so compelling. He embodies both sides of westward expansion, the good and the bad.
The triumphs and the tragedies.
Exactly. He makes us confront those uncomfortable truths about our history,
With those truths, they still resonate today.
They do. We can't just ignore the past, sweep it under the rug. We have to learn from it, understand it.
And that's what we're trying to do here, right?
That's right. Look past the myths, dig deeper. And speaking of digging deeper, our journey with Custer isn't over yet.
We still have the Battle of Little Bighorn to get to.
We do. That's where it all culminates, his ambition, his flaws, his legend. But to really understand it, we need to understand his adversaries.
The Lakota Sioux.
Yeah. Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, the tensions that led to that fateful encounter. That's what we'll be diving into next time.
I can't wait. It's going to be fascinating.
It will be. And until then, keep exploring, keep questioning. That's what history is all about.
And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'll see you then.